Good morning, everyone. I'm Terry Krotzer. I'm coming to you from the Lake Tops area of Washington with SOFT, and we want to welcome you to our first ever virtual conference for SOFT. We would certainly much rather be together with you in Virginia right now, but that wasn't going to happen. So we did some thinking about it, did some figuring out, and came up with a way to at least bring part of the conference not just to our friends here in the US, but around the world. So we're really excited, and we're going to kick this morning off with a great opening session. I know those of you who are regulars at conference know and love her, and those of you who haven't had a chance to meet her are about to know and love her. I'm going to introduce our two speakers. This morning we're going to hear from Dr. Deborah Bruns. We all know her lovingly as Debbie. She's a professor and off-campus program coordinator for the special education program in the School of Education at Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. She teaches coursework in collaborating with families with children with disabilities, as well as early childhood special education assessment and curriculum methods. Prior to this position, Dr. Bruns worked as an educational therapist at the New York Foundling Hospital. Several of the young children she worked with were diagnosed with Trisomy 18. And since its launch in 2007, Dr. Bruns has been the principal investigator of the Tracking Rare Incidence Syndromes, the TRIS program or project. And with her today is Alexis Petrilla. Lexi graduated from Southern Illinois University Carbondale with a bachelor's degree in rehabilitation services in December of 2019. She's interested in pursuing behavior analysis at the graduate level. Ms. Petrella currently works at 5 Star Industries as the Community Day Program instructor, overseeing direct support professionals working with adults with disabilities. She's extremely thankful to have the opportunity to work on the TRIS project. I need you near me, Lexi. We need a program like that because Chrissy has no place to go once school's out. Anyway, just want to turn it over now. Many of you know Debbie from our conferences. She has been doing studies on our kids for years. You know, she's one of our professionals that gives us hope and helps us show what our kids can do. And we are so appreciative to have her in our lives. She's in our hearts. Let me turn it over. Dr. Deborah Bruns. Debbie, over to you.
Thank you, Terry. And yeah, this is a little bit different having the virtual conference. Very happy to hopefully connect with some folks who I get to see every year at conference, and then some new folks who I know are out in the audience, not just in the United States, but also in other parts of the world. What I'd like to do is kind of walk everyone through this PowerPoint presentation as I would if we were face-to-face, and these materials will be made available. So if you can't catch everything, it's fine. You guys will be able to take a look at it. If you have a question, I'm going to show you kind of a list of the different areas I want to touch on about the project. And then Terry will, and Kelly, who are also kind of behind the scenes right now, will also help as questions come in. So I can probably take at least a few questions as I go through the presentation, and then maybe there'll be some other ones that if we can't get to them, I'll be more than happy to reach out and get back to folks. But we do have a project Facebook page, an email address, and a multitude of ways to be in touch. Terry mentioned that my background was working with young children with various types of disabilities. And yes, that's how I was introduced to this world of rare trisomies. So the photo that's up are 3 of the children that I worked with, and this was back in the early 1990s. All 3 little girls were diagnosed with trisomy 18. They came to my classroom, and I did not know anything about rare trisomies at that time. I knew about Down syndrome, that was about it. And I noticed right away that yes, they looked similar, but their personalities, their temperaments were very, very different. They all had some feeding needs, respiratory needs and such, but were very different individual little people. And they definitely could all learn. They all kind of formed attachments with us in the classroom and with some of the other staff. And that's really what pushed me ultimately to begin the TRIS project in 2007, was just wanting to learn more about Trisomy 18 is a place to start, because at that time, if I looked up information about Trisomy 18 when the web was just starting, I was greeted with autopsy photos for the most part, and very little access to any research. And I would go back into my classroom every day and see these three. So I really wanted to reconcile the information, the very limited information that was available, that was very, very grim and negative, and then having these three girls who were very outgoing, very social, and definitely showed that they could learn with the appropriate supports. So the main part of the project, of the TRIS project, is surveys. That's how information is collected, and over the years has resulted in presentations like this. I've presented at medical conferences. I have been a part with students like Lexi, writing up articles for publication, largely in medical journals. Some other journals have popped up as well for particular interests. There was an article that I published with one of my graduate students probably about 5-6 years ago, for example, that was about oral health. And it came from a parent that had a question about her daughter, who has a form of trisomy 13, and was running into a lot of issues on dental visits. And she wanted to know if other parents were seeing the same type of issues. And it became a full-fledged research article that was published in a journal in the dental field that focuses on working with special populations. So all of that information comes from these surveys, which I developed with help from Dr. Carey, who's known very, very well in soft circles, and parents like Terry and Kelly, to put together different areas to collect information. And what makes the TRIS project different is the follow-up component. So when a parent starts in the project, as many of you on this presentation I'm sure are aware, is the baseline survey. It's really, really long, it's really complicated, but it's meant to provide a view of your child from birth to the present time. And so if you start participating in the project when your child's a baby, it's really easy to do the baseline. If you come into the project later, you've heard about it later through another parent, for example, and your child's already 5 years old, well, then you would be sharing information basically from pregnancy through to present. And it's looking at medical issues, surgeries, family support, which is a kind of a unique piece of this because my background is not medical. It comes more from special education and early intervention specifically, so looking at the birth to 3 world. As I said, there's a follow-up survey that parents are asked to complete every year. So if you talk to someone like Terry or Kelly, they're years into the process. So I'll have a baseline survey, and then 5 years, 8 years, up to 12 years of additional data at this point for some of the children. There's also a modified survey for TRIS, which is for infants that lived up to 60 days, because I think it's also important to capture that type of data to look at some of the similarities and differences for the children that do live longer, and look at, because there are definitely some similarities that come up in cardiac care, for example, with children who do and do not receive interventions. Another big part of the project is responding to questions. They'll come from parents. Sometimes it's a mom who's pregnant. Sometimes it's a grandma who helps in caregiving for a child with a rare trisomy condition. I also get emails from students. I've had high school students, I've had graduate students, I've had postdocs who come across the project. And also questions from medical professionals. And those I always get real excited about, because I'll hear from someone from a different country who maybe it's the first time they have a child with trisomy 9 mosaicism who comes into their practice, whether it's a pediatrician, an orthopedist, what have you, and in trying to find out information about how to work with that child and their family, they'll come across the project. So that's kind of some general areas. What I want to highlight and what I've been presenting at the SOFT conference for the past few years is kind of a year in review to see the growth of the project in terms of the number of survey completions we have now, the types of requests that have been coming through from families, and just various kind of the changes that happen year to year in something like this, the number of surveys completed, and then sometimes a special project that comes in just at one point in time during 1 year. So I'm going to try to run through these. Again, if folks have questions about a particular component, I'll let Terry or Kelly kind of jump in. And if I don't get to the questions, I'll be more than happy to connect in some other way to answer that. One of the first things about the TRIS project is growing the project. That's an ongoing part of it. And in the last, I'd say at least 5 or 6 years, just with more use of social media and technology in general, I know the TRIS Facebook page does get quite a bit of love from folks. We're at about 1,600 people on the page right now. And it's definitely a mix of parents and caregivers. There are some medical folks who pop in on the page. And there's definitely many people that send questions via that page to get more information. I definitely try to post a great deal on the page, especially in March during Trisomy Awareness Month, to highlight the children, to highlight links. This past March, when everything changed in the world, what I was trying to do is highlight resources most every day that month that parents could maybe go to other sources for information about rare trisomy conditions and medical issues and things like that. One of the other parts that's kind of fun is on Facebook and some of the rare trisomy types of parent groups that I'm a part of. I'll have call outs, and parents will ask specific questions about the research or opinions and so on. And those are, I guess, in terms of the project, to me, really satisfying that people are saying, oh, wait, Bruns might have an answer for that. And also just to meet some new families and work on recruiting more folks to enroll. I also receive, and this is something that I would encourage people to do if you don't do it already, is you can sign up for Google Alerts. And if your child has trisomy 18, 9 mosaic, maybe one of the rarer types, you can then receive a Google alert anytime that particular condition comes up. And it can be a press release, it can be an article in a newspaper, it can be a segment on a TV show, and that helps to keep current on what is kind of going on with trisomy in the news. And Lexi will talk a little bit more about that part as well. This next slide just kind of gives you some numbers, and I promise this will be the only slide with numbers as such, but this just shows how many surveys have been completed. So if you're a parent who has enrolled in the project and not finished your baseline survey, or you received a reminder for your follow-up, this is where all the numbers work out. And just to give you an idea, for the modified survey, which is for parents completing a survey for their child who lived 60 days or less, there's almost a 90% completion rate. And in my circles in the academic world, that's pretty much unheard of. We usually look for at least a 40% completion rate to have kind of a valid survey when we're looking at data. So thank you is all I can say, to have a 90%, almost a 90% completion rate. And the full survey, that baseline, very involved survey, has close to 60% completion. So again, I thank everyone who over the 13 years of the project has helped make that happen. And again, for new parents to feel free and welcome to join the survey, and we can continue to have those numbers be higher. If you combine the two numbers here, that shows there's close to 1,300 individual children that are captured in these completed surveys. And again, it's children and adults with variations of trisomy 18, 13, 9, trisomy 6, just all the different rare types. The follow-up survey is, again, that longitudinal portion, which is really important when parents hear all the gloom and doom, that only 10% of the children reach, age 1 and all of those types of things. So you can see that the year 1 survey is over 370 completions, which is a sizable number, and those are continually coming in. And if you kind of scroll through all of these numbers, if you go to year 10, so those would be parents that have been involved in the project now for 11 years, and their children are still here, they're still updating their data, and that number stands at 15. So that is still a very impressive number from where we sit at the project. The next few slides I'm just going to run through real quick because I want to make sure that there's time for questions and for Lexi to talk about her part. But this is just an overview. I pulled out some of the examples of parent requests, the types of things that come through and the different locations. So for example, these are some of the parent requests. And what's interesting is some of the requests are very, very specific to their individual child with an issue that is happening at a particular point in time. And then there are definitely, I would say, clusters that there'll be several parents, maybe over a number of months, but they're asking about the same types of things. And often it's asking about developmental information that they can share with their child's medical team. And I see that as really positive, just that it's not only focusing on the medical aspects of it, which are of course very important if a child has a need for cardiac surgery, needs a trach, things like that. But it seems over the years that there's now more of a focus, more questions where parents want to find out more about their child's communication and ways to support their child's communication, or learning more about different types of equipment that will help their child, even if they, for example, maybe won't walk independently, but different types of equipment that they can use and then go back to their physical therapist to ask for, like a gait trainer or something like that. So if you kind of go down this list, there's the question about developmental, the developmental focus. And there's been a lot more requests from parents that have children with trisomy 9 mosaicism, which is, I guess, at this point, the TRIS project has the largest number of children with that condition, kind of in one place, with data on close to 100 children. So there's been quite a few requests. And if you see, most of the requests are from the United States, but then I also had a parent from Malaysia pop in asking for information about developmental outcomes. Again, going on with this, I received quite a few requests for support, often from parents that have a child where they've just received the diagnosis and they're looking to connect. Maybe they don't have as much opportunity or access to go online, because I know that the Facebook groups for rare trisomies keep growing. But sometimes, again, I end up having a parent. So this first one was a mom with her newly diagnosed child in Poland. And I was able to go through the project's database and identify another mom in Poland with a child with the same diagnosis, and actually was able to ask the mom who was already enrolled in the project if she would be interested in connecting with this new mom who was very overwhelmed. The medical team she was working with knew nothing about trisomy 9 mosaicism, and ultimately they did connect. So again, this is some other examples with contact from folks in Denmark, Australia, and so on. It's interesting to receive requests from students, and there's been a number of occasions where it's been an older sibling that's looking to do a project on trisomy 18, for example, and who has heard all of the negatives when they go with their sibling to a medical appointment and things like that. And they're in a genetics unit in, their junior year of high school, and they want to bring more awareness to trisomy 18 or a different rare condition. And I don't know if the parent sends them to me or they're looking online and fall into the project, but we've had quite a few high school age siblings working on projects and being able to share information from the TRIS project with them. And then there's been similar types of things from college age siblings as well. And sometimes it is people just kind of out of the blue who send me an email asking for information. Again, just quickly, there's also medical professionals, people from different aspects of kind of the medical world that will ask questions. And these are really interesting because they will come from all over the world. You'll have people who are genetic counselors. If you go through this list, there's a school psychologist in Colorado that popped up. And this recent one at the bottom was from someone who's a classroom aide in France. And they were going to have a child with trisomy 9 mosaicism in the classroom. She had already worked with the child a little bit, but wasn't sure about the transition into formal schooling, and was asking for some pointers and also some information she could take back to the kindergarten teacher she was going to be working with. So it's just been kind of an adventure. This is one of the parts of the TRIS project that's been just really fun, as people have stumbled onto it and kind of pop up asking all these different types of questions. I even recently had a parent who was in France, but the person who connected us was from Brooklyn, New York. So it's just all these really interesting kind of pathways that lead people to the project. Typically when a parent or a medical person asks a question, there's a couple different types of responses that we can share with them. Often we start with TRIS project materials, and then other times I'll go into the database and look to kind of connect people or look for specific data to pull out that maybe we haven't reviewed yet. And that's oftentimes where my students help me, which is awesome, where they help with data mining. Sometimes it's connecting people through Facebook, through email. And then oftentimes I will also reach out through Soft and share the care book. Done that quite a bit. And then also looking at organizations like NORD and Unique and highlighting information about different rare conditions there as well, which often the TRIS project is also involved in updating that information. So it all is kind of this big circle that comes around. The next part, and this is something that's been unique now for the past 2 years, for folks who were at conference last year. And Lexi was with me, as well as Martina, who was walking around filming everyone. And her film is just about done, so there'll be more information about that very, very soon. Martina is from Italy, and we kind of found each other. She reached out probably about 1.5 years ago, or a little more than 2 years ago. She has a family member that has a rare trisomy condition and ended up coming out to the States last year in time for conference, spoke to quite a few parents. And what's been really interesting is this year we've shifted a little bit because she's been working on the film, but now I'm also working with her dad, who is Piero, and he has background in statistics and math and things like that. So he's actually helping the TRIS project look more deeply into some of the data for children with trisomy 9 mosaicism. And again, we have almost 100 completed baseline surveys for that group. And we're ultimately looking to create a profile. So trisomy 18 and 13 have quite a bit of information that creates kind of a profile. For example, the recommendations to have the ultrasounds and such done to check children's kidneys to make sure there's no precancerous conditions or cancer or anything like that. There is not a similar type of profile just yet for trisomy 9 mosaicism. But the hope is now that we have almost 100 children to look at, and then having someone with a very strong statistical background, we can start really creating more of a profile, which would ultimately update the available literature, which is then shared with medical professionals and families and so on. So that's something exciting that I'm sure we'll be continuing. Last year at conference, Jennifer attended, and she's been at conference a couple times. She's mom to a trisomy 18 angel, and actually had she and I had worked together to assist her with data for her dissertation, which culminated in an article. And now we're continuing to work together, even though it's been a little crazy the past few months trying to connect. But we're looking to focus more on developmental milestones, and we're looking, starting with trisomy 18, and really looking a lot at communication and children using different types of communication devices, augmentative communication type devices, and also mobility. I've always felt very strongly from my own developmental background that, you know, a child doesn't have to walk to be mobile. And if they can use a gait trainer, if they can cruise, if they can do different kinds of things, that's really the emphasis that we want to, Jennifer and I have talked a lot about, Dr. Donovan and I have talked a lot about, to get information out there to just raise awareness that yes, the child may not walk on their own, but using different types of equipment, they can still move around your house, or they can move around their school building and things like that. So we're kind of continuing our collaboration. And I'm gonna hop off here for a second and let Lexi talk to you about the next piece.
Everybody, am I unmuted now?
Yep, you're good.
Awesome. All right, hello everybody. This is my second SOF conference that I have been able to be a part of. And although it's a little odd having to do it over Zoom, I am so beyond thankful to be a part of this. So thank you very much, Dr. Bruns, and all of the SOF families. So through the TRIS project, I have been completing and updating the case studies since they were first created in 2014. And so far, I have been able to update Aniella's case study, and she has full trisomy 18, Natalia, who she has full trisomy 13, and Mackenzie, who has trisomy 9 mosaicism. And currently, I am working with 2 other families and their kiddos on updating their case studies, and hopefully, by the time I'm done with my master's, then we will have all 12 completed. It is a lengthy process, and to kind of go over the process a little bit. So first, we try to review all of the follow-up survey data that has been completed from their families. And then there is consistent outreach to their parents for additional information and to verify that all information is accurate on the case study and the parts that I have written up to update. And then once they are fully updated, then Dr. Bruns puts them on her TRIS project Facebook page, and that is where they're featured. And I believe the 3 case studies that have been completed are up on the Facebook page for all to see. And the case studies are such an amazing and important part to the TRIS project, since it highlights the longitudinal nature of the project so far and all of the positive outcomes from these kiddos as they have grown over the last 10, 12 years. So it has been amazing to be a part of this the past year. So.
And from my side, over the course of the project, I've had the opportunity to work with many undergraduate students, some graduate students as well, but I've definitely seen the undergraduate students be very excited to kind of jump in, and I've always tried to share parts of the project with them that would put them in direct contact with families. So the case studies is, and if you ask any of the parents who've been involved with them, it's definitely kind of a labor of love, because we go back and forth to make sure everything is accurate. Part of Lexi's job that she didn't mention was kind of getting on parents to complete their follow-ups if they hadn't done it for a little while, because when we look at something that's been online that was initially completed in 2014, and we were looking in 2018 and 19 to do updates, so we thought, oh, most of the children that we've highlighted, we should have however many follow-up surveys done. We should have all those years covered. And we know that life gets crazy, and all of you have other responsibilities, other children, your jobs, parents. I mean, we understand that it's not necessarily your child, 24/7 every second. So part of this was initially for me to reach out to parents and say, hey, we want to do these updates. There's been some amazing things that your kids have been doing. We want to let people know. But you haven't completed your last 2 years. We need to do all your follow-ups right now in one time. So I definitely extend gratitude to Lexi to kind of keeping up with folks and emailing and phone calls, and there was reports sent back and forth that we would then kind of decipher all the medical information and be able to then take those case studies, do the updates. And I think for me, always the most exciting part, at the very end, was putting in an updated photo and being able to see the change in 5 years. Again, when we're talking about kids who many people write them off and say, oh, they're barely going to make a year and they're not going to do anything, where we could take Aniella, for example, who just finished middle school, and have a photo of her in her cap and gown, and have that next to her photo as an infant, and look at how far she's come in respiratory issues she's had. She's one of our kiddos with full 18 who is mobile and she walks, and to really be able to share that case study with parents who are new to all this, or maybe a parent who's had a real roller coaster ride with their child, and to be able to say there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe not for every single child, but we want to highlight these 12. And as Lexi said, we've got 3 full updates that have been featured on the Facebook page. They're online on the web page. We have 2 more in process, and hopefully we can kind of keep pushing forward and highlight all these different kiddos and how wonderful they're doing. Another piece that I was real excited that happened in the past year was the National Organization for Rare Disorders, or NORD. It's kind of this huge organization and database that has information about rare diseases, and kind of gives a profile about treatment options and needs for different folks. So when you look at the whole list, if you ever choose to, there are just many diseases and conditions, genetic and otherwise. So ours, thinking about trisomy 18, for example, is one of the more common. It's not as rare as we may think. If you look inside this NORD database, where some of the conditions literally only have maybe a few dozen people who've been identified with it. But what's exciting is the TRIS project is recognized to the point that the group of people that are in charge of updating these different entries, this one about updating the trisomy 18 entry is actually not the first time that TRIS has been approached to update an entry. I think this is our 3rd one that we've updated at this point. And the information goes in there. Contact information for the TRIS project is also included. So from my perspective of beginning the project in 2007, this working with NORD and Unique and some of these other organizations really highlights to me that people know we're here, that the TRIS project is known around the country, around the world, and that we're seen as we do have information to provide to update the information that's out there for parents and medical folks. So I just took a screenshot of the page on the NORD website that has the update, and I'll take it back to Lexi.
Yes, so also while working with the TRIS project, I have been collecting a whole binders and different platforms full of general media articles. So, and these are what all of the Google alerts that Dr. Bruns had mentioned earlier. These are the Google alerts that she get sent in to her, and we kind of just compile. I apologize, my puppies. That's what that noise is. She keeps banging on the window. So we have been compiling all of the general media articles since its inception in 2007. And it has been my job to kind of just put all of the articles that we have in different categories, such as milestones of different children and adults, and different fundraising efforts. And it has been truly amazing to read through all of these articles and really, understand what the families of, what all of you families go through, including your milestones of your children, including fundraising efforts, and all of the different articles that you get to see online. And we have different segments from TV shows, including from the USA, from UK, from Canada. And it has been amazing to kind of go through all of these articles and categorize them. And I'm hoping that we can do something really, amazing once we can get back to school and work together and hopefully make something big for all of you guys to see everything that we have compiled over the last, everything that's been compiled over the last 12 years, but everything we have done together in the last year.
Yeah. And we definitely do have binders and binders. There's stacks waiting to be put away. And
right now.
there's a big stack waiting to be filed. And what's real fun and interesting too is, as all of you as parents and SOFT and so on have grown in awareness, so like March being Trisomy Awareness Month, we get so many alerts in March, and there's so many TV segments highlighting children and parents who are reaching out to their local media to kind of brag on their kids, or they're upset about something and want a different kind of service, or they're not getting something that they want. And now there's just a lot more response to that. I mean, if we would show you the binders and what we were finding the first couple of years, and most of it was very negative and really sad types of things. It was that reinforcing that negative, the kids don't live, their quality of life isn't good. And now some of those continue, but we also see a lot more, child reaches milestone, and this particular child reaches their 5th birthday, and the media is there for their birthday party. And some of the children that we have case studies of have been in the news. So Aniella has her own file, and she's been in the newspaper, and she was filmed one year for a SOFT conference when the local media, I think we were in Salt Lake City, had come in during the clinics, and she was one of the kiddos they highlighted because she was walking up and down the hall, and people were saying, wait, she has trisomy 18, she shouldn't be able to do that. And it's like, well, here she is. And her mom, was on, talking about her accomplishments and such. So again, as Lexi said, we have a ton of information. We're trying to figure out how to package it and what to do with it. But it is definitely more so on the positive side now than when we started compiling and going through some of the media articles and segments from earlier on. So again, we feel like it's some way, hopefully TRIS Project has helped push that needle a little bit. We've been mentioned in a couple articles too, which has been really, really nice. Had a couple call outs from families. So we're gonna keep working on this, keep filling those binders. This is one of the things people at conference who know me for years know I try to keep kind of a low profile and, hang out with the families and spend time with the kiddos. I do this because I just really want to make a difference for all of you. But I guess at this point in time, being so far into it, I received a couple honors this year, which not really expected. I mean, I've been part of SOFT for a very long time in terms of going to conference here in the US with presenting and recruiting new people for the project. I've been really happy to have a lot of, families be, friends, people I consider friends that we follow each other on Facebook and congratulate each other on things and so on. But in the past 12 months, I've received 2 honors. One is through SOFT USA, to be part of their medical and scientific advisory board. And it was kind of funny when it came to pass, because Dr. Carey said, well, you've kind of been part of the board already. Maybe we just didn't make it official, because there's certain emails that I get where I'm the only person on there with a PhD. Everyone else has a medical degree. And but so this year we kind of made it official, which is really exciting for me. And I've also been working with SOFT UK kind of on and off, just from knowing some of the parents over there, like Demi and Heidi and some of the other families there. So I have been named now as a one of the folks on their professional advisor team, and have been invited to go over to England, hopefully next year. They have their conference every other year. So I've been asked in my capacity as a professional advisor and to speak about the TRIS project, hopefully next May. So that's been exciting. The photo here, many of you know Shirley. She's been involved in SOFT and way back to the days where we used to get online on a listserv and talk to each other. I'm sure Terry and Kelly remember that as well. Shirley's been a backbone of the project from the very beginning. She was the person that I was able to give a laptop to many, many years ago, and she has grown and worked with our database. She's the person when you enroll in the project who gives you your login and your password, and then when it doesn't work, she'll fix it. And she's the person who sends you reminders to work on your surveys and so on. So I just wanted to give her kind of a shout out. She's been having internet issues in her area, so she would have joined us today if she was able to get online, but she's definitely been someone who has been kind of a backbone, being able to process new enrollees, give me updates on things. Our TRIS at siu.edu email address actually goes to Shirley first. And then if she can't answer a question, it comes on to me, to my direct email address. And one of the other things I kind of wanted to highlight too, if you're familiar with our website, is twice a year I write a brief update of what we've been doing, which also again helps create this yearly review. But I try to highlight the number of survey completions, any new collaborations that are going on. So when I work on those twice yearly updates, I also make sure to go through Shirley and make sure I'm not missing anything. So we just want to keep all of our folks involved in that way. This last slide is, again, contact information. So if anyone would like to reach out directly to me, that's great. Please do so. There's a couple of links to the project's website, including the enrollment page. Typically, if you're coming in as a new parent, you will get information back within 48 hours with your login and password. That is your information. It's unique to you. You will keep it over your time in the program. Just as you come in and do your annual updates, your password changes slightly, but it's pretty much the same information year to year. There's also a link to the case studies there to take a look at. On the page, another piece of information that I think I share quite a bit when parents send questions in is our information modules. Those were completed, I think at this point, about 3 years ago. And there's 2 sets of modules, or 3 sets of modules that cover Trisomy 18, 13, and 9 mosaicism. And the 18 and 13s is more focused on children with full Trisomy 18 and 13. What the module's intention is to give some background information. So going back to when the first cases were identified and questions from there. and research and lots of photos. TRIS project really, one of the big pushes for me is always having photos of the kids highlighted. So I do ask parents if they're comfortable with completing a photo release form. And then at this point, I typically grab photos off Facebook. On our homepage, you'll always see a few children featured, and we try to update that every maybe 2 months or so. But the information modules are meant as information that can be shared both with families and with medical professionals. And it gives as clear of a profile as we can, using TRIS project data as well as the research base in terms of thinking about medical needs, developmental needs, and so on. So again, I encourage folks who have not looked at the project website to kind of take a look, see what we have up there. There's links to other information as well. The Facebook page is updated fairly often. I try, maybe every week or so, to provide links to things, ask questions, and look for feedback from people on the page. And if folks leave messages there, I've actually had a message, almost a conversation that's been going on actually close to a week, I believe, with a dad in Saudi Arabia who's been asking for information. His daughter actually has Williams syndrome, which is really not a focus of the TRIS project, but I've been trying to get him connected with some associations, and he's been sharing photos of his child and the medical reports and things like that. So sometimes the project goes bigger than some of these rare conditions. Lexi, was there anything else you wanted to add?
I wanted to kind of add that if any of your children are now beginning to transition into becoming an adult, and if there's not services in your area, or day programs, or if there's any type of activities or anything that I can, or Dr. Burns or I can even help direct you towards, I would love to help. I know a lot of professionals that I get to work with at 5-Star, and we could kind of get our resources together and try to help in that way as well.
Sure. And I think jumping off that, there's also a few families very involved in the TRIS project who have come up with some amazing options for their kids or their young adults at this point. And that would actually be something, I guess, to add to our list to pursue, what some people have come up with their child. Kind of, there's one family I know where their child who's pretty high functioning volunteers in the community. And that's how they've kind of set up her program, per se, where she has someone who goes with her, but she's able to volunteer in some places in their local area. And then other people, that have found some other novel ways to kind of keep their young adults out in the community and still learning and interacting with folks. So I'm looking on Zoom. I know we have a couple minutes. I think there might be a couple questions. So let me, okay, and then I'll hopefully do the, if I stop my share, I can then see the chat, Kelly, or how do we want to do that? I see a couple questions.
Right. So we have a question from Laura Elmer, and she said her son is 12 and a half and he has trisomy 18. She's uncertain if they're enrolled in the project. She says her son uses a gait trainer and an AAC device, and she'd love to participate.
Oh, okay. I would have to get back into the database. The name doesn't sound familiar right off the top, but sometimes people's names change and so on. So at the end of this, I'll still see the chat, right? So then I can go back in and check.
I don't know once we close it out if that you'll be able to see the chat still. So I
Maybe
will
just screenshot it.
Yep.
I can screenshot it as well and then send it.
Perfect.
Okay, and then if Laura can include her email address, then we can let her know if she's in, and if not, I can reach out to her with the enrollment information. Yeah, no problem at all.
And it looks like we have one more question up here.
Okay.
It says, do you have any information on full trisomy 18 children with epilepsy?
I do. I would need a little more detail in terms, is the question about treatment? Is the question about when the condition began? But yes, we do have some info on that. And again, if folks can include their email address, I can kind of start a conversation there.
Okay, Laura Elmer did put her email address in the chat, so
Yeah.
Alexis, if you want to screenshot that, that'd be great.
Okay.
And then we also have a question. You mentioned getting updates on Google about trisomy issues. How do we do that?
I have it set up through my Gmail account, and there's an option, and I've had it set up for a long time, so I apologize if I don't remember how I set it up right off. And Erin, I think we've connected before, so I can backtrack and figure out how I did that. But there's a Google alert where you enter the subjects that you want it to look for. And then as Google does updates, it kind of screens everything. And the downside is I get Google alerts for a lot of things I really don't like. Some of the very technical medical things will come up. When they were first starting all the prenatal testing types of things, I was getting tons of alerts about this new test or materials for a test or something like that. So I just have to kind of sort through them. But I usually don't get more than maybe 2 or 3 alerts in a day. So it's easy to keep track of. So Erin, if I have your info, or if you want to include your email address in the chat, I will let you know how to sign up for that. Oh, okay, I see her email address down there.
Right, and then Laura Elmer also says that she'd love information on epilepsy, cortical visual impairment, diaphragmatic hernia, and kyphosis.
Okay. And I guess one of the things, just so folks understand process, so what I can do is when you see the full survey, there's many questions. Sometimes it's not exactly what you're asking for, but when you said like kyphosis, I know that's a question on the survey. So what I would need to do is, and Lexi may be the one helping me do this, is we would go into the database. What ends up happening is you download a certain part of the survey that would have that item, and then we would kind of skim through it to identify all the parents who said yes, their child had that condition. And then we would have to filter through it a second level. So if your child has trisomy 18, we would filter it through not just everyone, but now we would filter through just finding kids with trisomy 18. And then depending how detailed the questions are, are we looking at kids between, birth to 5? Are we looking at teenagers? And so on. So every step where we can make it more specific also takes a little more time for us to kind of do what we call data mining to find out that information. And then we can also look over time. So if I was looking at Terry's daughter, who we have multiple years of data on, and we looked at kyphosis, I could see if that came up every year. And then maybe in year 3, something was done and she had received a new brace or there was surgery, then I can drill down to give even more specific information. So basically, as long as the item is on the survey, we can look for answers for you. It just depends how specific you're looking for, is also how long it will take for us to pull out that information. But we're more than happy to do it. And as I said, if I have email addresses, I can talk to folks and be able to really kind of cater to exactly what you're asking. And I see there's more messages. There's lots of messages.
Yes, there are.
Can we just copy and paste out of the chat? Will it let us do that too?
It will.
Okay, cool. Good. So there was one more question I thought I saw.
Somebody asked, is there a way to see how many times we have entered information into the database?
Yes, as long as you give me your name. The database kind of keeps track. So if you've started your baseline, literally there's dates attached to each section that you've worked on. And then depending how many follow-ups, you will come up multiple times in the database with dates attached as well. So that can be looked up. I know sometimes people, if you haven't saved your login and password, maybe you've switched computers and your computer remembered your password, but now you have a new one. If you don't have that information, we can get it to you. Okay. As we keep looking at the questions, again, thank you guys so much. I know this is something a little bit different. My hope is to kind of seeing the positive in the virtual conference is that some people joined this session who may not have been able to make it to Virginia. And this isn't what I can say from going to the conference for over 10 years at this point. Is it's just amazing on so many levels to actually see all the kids in one place. And every time there's a new little baby, we're all fighting over, you know, the babies, and then the big kids kind of are there and show, you can just see that kind of that passage over time. I mean, I remember the first time I met Kelly's little one, who's now a really big one, and she was teeny tiny, and just following over time the changes and the amazing interactions that parents have, you know, in terms of giving each other hope and recommendations, and hopefully the TRIS project will continue to fit in with all of that as SOFT moves forward, as the project moves forward. And we're more than happy to try to answer questions, as many people as we can get in the project, and keep growing it so we can give back to the SOFT community with more information and resources. I really see it kind of going hand in hand and continuing forward.
We have one more question from, I think the name is Caris.
Okay.
It says, what about equipment that is commercially for non-T18 children, but can be used for children with disabilities?
Okay. Again, I need a little more specificity if you're looking at things around mobility. Is it just toys to elicit cause and effect, language, those types of things? And again, I think, I mean, I can give you some ideas, but I think the real amazing like plethora of resources is going to come from other parents to ask kind of things that they've jerry-rigged up that maybe another child has played with, that they found a novel way to introduce to their child with a rare condition, who maybe doesn't have the fine motor skills or isn't ready to sit up yet and play with this toy, but they found a way to make an adaptation to it. So I'm more than happy to answer your question if you give me a little more detail. And if you include your email address, I will be more than happy to get back with you, just the age of your child and kind of what areas of development you're looking at.
And I see that there are a few more questions. I'm not sure if we have time to answer them or not, but I have screenshots. I'm going to try and copy and paste them all for Dr. Bruns.
Awesome.
And then everyone who has their email, we will make sure to get back to you. But also Dr. Bruns' email was in the PowerPoint for everyone to see.
Yep, and you can reach us on our Facebook page. If you're on one of the Facebook Rare Trisomy groups, you can always give the project or me directly a shout out, and I'll answer there. But I'm seeing more email addresses coming in, so yes, we will get back to you, I promise. So, and I'm excited that you guys will be, to see people on other calls, and if it's, whether it's your 10th conference or your first one, I think this will still be an amazing way to bring everybody together.
Yeah, we're going to have a great week, and we certainly appreciate your time, Debbie and Lexi, for coming on. Couldn't have been a better way to launch our conference than with the TRIS project, because it means so much to our kids. And I will definitely be in touch with you, Lexi, about the adult we need more. Chrissy's
Sure.
going through school to work, but it's taken, you know, this whole creative coming up with what to do is interesting. Anyway, appreciate everybody taking the time today, not only our speakers, but everyone in the community coming out and supporting the event. Go to trisomy.org, sign up for other events. If you haven't done that, there's still space. We'll be back here at 2 o'clock Central Time launching our professional series. So if you're a medical professional, hopefully you're signed up for Dr. Carey's talk, and we'll be able to hear from him then. Keep in mind though, you know, it is a professional panel, but that doesn't mean you won't get a chance to see it as parents. It will be recorded and up on the website for you to watch here within the next day or so. And then of course, tonight we have our welcome to conference. So join us then, bring the whole family. Again, and we just appreciate everybody's time today, and we'll see everybody later. Thanks to our speakers, and bye-bye for now.